Okay, we can go.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's conversation. As you know, USAID is a development agency and a catalyst in driving development objectives. This means embarking on all-inclusive development objectives that includes women, people living with disabilities, and members of minority communities and the LGBTIQ community as leaders in projects supported by USAID. In today's conversation, we will be joined by two amazing guests. First up, we will have Olwethu Sipuka, who is an activist for people living with disabilities and a director of our YALI Southern Africa Regional Center. He has extensive experience in policy development, higher education program, and program management. Olwethu also holds a PhD from University of Cape Town. Another guest that we have is Ntswaki Toolo, who is a chairperson of a cooperative in Kroonstad, which is in the Free State, where they run a food garden project supported by USAID through INMED South Africa. This program is about economic empowerment for people living with disabilities. It helps build their capacity to enable them to reach this stage where they are able to trade their produce. The objective is for them to produce at a larger scale throughout the Free State province. Before we kick off today's session, I would like Ntswaki to introduce herself. Then she'll be followed by Olwethu. Over to you, Ntswaki.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ntswaki Toolo. I'm a chairperson of Ntswaki Cooperative that is funded by INMED. I'm also a chairperson of DWSA, that is Disabled Women South Africa, here in Free State. That is the Women's League of Disabled People South Africa, that is DPSA.
Thank you so much. Olwethu, over to you.
Well, I'm happy that May is the chairperson of DWDA, which is our women's league as disabled people South Africa, because it merely means that we're going to be speaking from the same script with regards to the ideological outlook of disability, both in South Africa and outside South Africa. And she'll be leading me because I'm a mere spokesperson of Disabled People South Africa, taking guidance from her and many other leaders at DPSA. But I'm also a disability rights activist in my own right. I've completed my PhD in disability studies, also with UCT. But this one particularly is with regards to higher education of persons with disabilities, and with my masters that I've shared with colleagues, having been on the plight of women with disabilities with regards to economic participation. So broadly, that is me, and I'm hoping that we're going to have a very fruitful discussion. Thank you very much, colleagues.
Thank you so much, Olwethu. Ntswaki, will kick off the session with you, and we just would like to get your perspective on what Women's Month means to you as a woman living with disability and working with people with disability.
Okay, Tumi. I'd like to start with that I'm a disabled woman myself. I was affected with polio in the 1960s. Now I know what disability is. As a woman with disability, it's not easy to be included based on history we came from. We have been discriminated because we are Black, we are women, we are disabled. Like other women, we did recognize Women's Month, as it is also give us opportunity to raise awareness about challenges that we are facing as women with disabilities. The main challenge that I can say is accessibility. Accessibility towards, like for instance, you are a deaf woman. You go to the police station to report that you are abused. There is no sign language interpreter there. No, now the case is not open because there's no one to interpret for you. That's one of our challenges. As blind women, we don't have documents that we can read. Like I have said that now we have new technology. Deaf, blind people, women, they cannot use, because some of the computers, they don't have word, they don't even have voice. That's another challenge that we have. As a physical disabled women, sometimes we don't have ramps where we go. That's the challenge. Even the lift, sometimes they are broken. You must start using the stairs. As you can see, I'm too big and I'm disabled. How I'm going to go upwards with the stairs? Now I'm going to ask somebody to help me to go upwards. Another frustration challenge that we have as women with disabilities is transport. When you want transport to go to town, you are using a wheelchair. The driver is not going to wait you to come with the wheelchair. They are even the public saying, no, you're wasting our time now. We are late for work and everything like that. That is the challenges that we have. I can just pause there, then I'll go again. I don't know if you want me to go through again.
No, that was very clear, and thank you. And you had captured it so well that it puts all the challenges that you face into perspective. And for us as well, it teaches us to be more empathetic to some of the abilities that we have, we take for granted, and also in making your world also better for you to access and have mobility, and also be able to be an active economic participant in the economy. I think that is also taking us through to maybe Olwethu as a activist in the space. Maybe you can share with us some of ways that you think women and the people with disabilities can be supported in society so that they're able to take on economic positions in society, and also take the role that men can play to make this possible.
Thanks a lot, Tumi. I think just following up on what Mes was raising initially about disability and the challenges thereof, and I'm going to link it nicely to your question, namely that it is not the person who is disabled, it is the society that disables the person. Because between me and you, if you go to the airport now, the lifts that are there, the escalators that are there, are generally made for those that are having disabilities. But you would know that between me and you and all other persons, it becomes easiest. And that's what we talk about when we're talking about issues related to universal design. Namely that it's a design that everybody is able to use freely in terms of access. So what people with disabilities want is not a zoo for them alone, for the lack of a better word, but it's for an inclusive society that appreciates them and their needs as well, for everybody's benefit. You know that at Absa Bank, the teller that's there for persons with disabilities serves better, in fact, women that are pregnant. So what we are saying is that society must take out the blinkers that they are forever putting in terms of persons with disabilities and seek to arrive at a universally accessible society. And the only way to do that, besides taking out the blinkers, is to make sure that your attitude changes, because the biggest barrier to people with disabilities and their emergence, be it in business, in higher education institutions, and everywhere else in society, is that of ignorance, in fact, because attitude is linked to ignorance, is the ignorance that society has on what it is that the sector requires. So if you're able to deal with those fundamental barriers, then we are saying to policymakers, when we are making policy about, she was talking earlier about assistive devices, make policy that is universal accessible so that everybody can access those benefits and those policy directives equally. If you're talking about Standard Bank offering loans, for businesses, make sure that those are fully inclusive. And in that way, everybody would participate. Disabled people will tell you all over the world that they do not want handouts. Here in South Africa recently, they're saying if it was for them, they would say the disability grant must go away, but that money be used to fund their education, be used to fund their independence, and be used to fund their business and all of that. Because the disability rights struggle is not a struggle for handouts, it's a struggle purely for independence, that they will be able to live their lives in a manner that everybody else lives. So broadly, that's our first response. Thanks a lot, Sister.
Thank you so much, Olwethu. And I mean, picking up from your points as well, when I look at a program like INMED, they have a lot of, in their cooperatives, they have a lot of the members of the community that have a disability, but it's different types of disabilities. And what they've managed to do is, because they grow agriculture produce, you then have, depending on everybody's strengths, an activity within the growing of the produce, the supply chain of the produce, everyone being a part of the process. So you have some that are graders in the process, and they're able to, based on touch and feel skills, classify commodities from like an A grade, B grade, classify them according to size, and also help in the cleaning process. And that also talks to not having a handout kind of like approach, but enabling them and integrating them in society and giving them a chance to also use their skill to be part of economic citizens for the country as well, which is great. I think Ntswaki, will move over to you, and from your perspective, we'll try and would like to get a better understanding of whether you see any opportunities made available for women living with disabilities to prosper within their in their communities. Like, through your interaction and from your experience, do you see any of those opportunities? And are there some that you'd like to see that haven't really been... Go ahead.
Sorry. Okay, May. Well, I can start with government first.
Mm-hmm.
When coming to government, I can say government has good policies, but the main challenge is to implement them. For example, employment equity says 50% in terms of employment and should be women. Mm-hmm. But you will find that they only focus on able-bodied persons, not disabled people. They forget about us as disabled women. I think for us, there should be penalties for companies not reaching the employment of 7% But in general, the women 50% quota, and all aspects should be inclusive to women with disabilities. I think.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. In our community, we have still challenges. As I have said, the community, I don't know if that is that mindset that the disabled cannot do anything. Now INMED is helping us to grow the food garden, the vegetables and everything. The community itself, they starting to take our things, they start to rob us, they start to, I don't know what is problem now, because we are trying to empower ourselves. We don't want, like Olwethu say, that we don't want to depend on disability grant. If a community can understand that we are trying and they must meet us halfway, help us, not destroying us.
Thank you so much. That's a valid point that you raise, and it talks a lot to the stigma that you face in society, especially from the work that you're doing and having to sell some of your produce to the community as well. There's a lot of stigma in people procuring from you. There's a lot of stigma in people providing assistance to you. And you also highlighted some of the sabotage that comes in from the community as you're trying to create a business for yourself so that you can support your family and so that you can also earn an income and have a business that thrives. Olwethu, on your end, do you think there are specific support interventions that could probably be adopted that would help in this instance, that would also be put in place for people with disabilities to thrive in various areas of development, business, and also in politics?
So thanks a lot to me. So when I took over the running of the Young African Leaders Initiative here at UNISA, the first question I'd asked was, what is the percentage of persons with disabilities that have gone through the program? And I was told it was just around 2%. And I think we're happy to announce that out of just above 7,000 young people between the ages of 18 and 35, in the 2 years of my tenure, we're now sitting at about 8%. So at a political level, it requires political will in order to achieve. I don't think that we do have the political will, at least in South Africa and many parts of the continent, with regards to that. It's largely, and South Africa would always say they've got legislation, this and that, and so on. But legislation without political will and administrative will is useless, because it must be people that must go implement that legislation, interpret it, and make sure that those that are intended to benefit actually do benefit, and it's not happening. I joined DPSA, I think, around 2001. I even served as one of the provincial managers in the Eastern Cape then, and I'm sure May would know about them. And at the time, we're still talking about 2% of persons with disabilities being employed by government, 2%. And in my close to 7 to 8 years then, not a single government department had met 2%. 2%. And the recent census report is saying that the prevalence of disability today sits at 7.5%. Now you are telling me that a people that could not implement 2% are going to all of a sudden wake up and implement 7.5%. It's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
The women without disabilities struggling. is gaining a lot of mileage. But yesterday, the Director General of the Department of Public Services, YALI, was complaining that even government is failing to meet the 50% threshold. So you have got a patriarchal society and an anti-disabled society that is doing its utmost best to make sure that it suppresses those that are not currently holding the political, economic, and social stratas of our society. So until we dismantle that patriarchal anti-disability, strata, then we're all failing. And all that what for me means is that people with disabilities must speak in one voice, particularly women with disabilities, because when they go to the other forums in the UN and so on, you find people from the same country reading from different scripts. So what is required amongst the sector is unity for purpose. And once we achieve that, it will become easy for the sector to literally deal with all the other hurdles that we face along the way. So for me, really, the interventions are there, but without the will, politically and administratively, it's not possible to achieve what is there in the legislation.
Thank you so much, Olwethu. It actually takes me back to a conversation I was having with Mayor Ntswaki earlier on, talking about how, as a nation, women count for the most and the majority of the population. The disabled community is also a grouping that is not heard of, and we don't give them enough opportunities so that they also able to thrive. And in addressing the socioeconomic challenges we face, without us giving the voice to women and people with disabilities, which are the minorities in any decision-making platform, we are then unable to actually address those challenges that lead to an unequal state as we currently have it. And I was just thinking of what are like some of those assistance programs that could be put in place. I don't know, maybe if from the thesis that you've provided, there's some snippets and highlights that you would want us to share with us about any assistance that can be provided or any insights that can drive the next policy direction for policymakers that might be listening.
So you know that there's Basadzi, there's quite a number of female programs that exist that have been funded to spur entrepreneurship amongst women in general. Had those programs not have been there, and women were said that they must go and fight with the wolves, for the lack of a better word, in the open market, chances are your glorious robbers that we have today in the women's sector, business sector, would not have been there, and the many others that we see today. So for me, one of the proposals we're making is that we need to have dedicated funds that are going to target women in entrepreneurship, so that you're not necessarily becoming a nanny. It's not a nanny program, but it's an incubation program that seeks to get them out of where they are and lift them up into big business. And once they reach that stage, then you bring in a new breed of women entrepreneurs and so on. And equally, that's what we're proposing with regards to higher education, that in higher education, you ought to have a particular quota that is going to make sure that at NFSAS, for instance, it's targeted at females that are wanting to get into universities and this and assist those, And we're saying that all that is required is that South Africa has got some of the best legislations, some of the best programs, but we're required to make sure that you integrate female entrepreneurs in particular in those programs and have a separate kitty and budget for them, monitor that properly, make sure that the monies are doing what they're meant to do, and grow the businesses and link them to bigger businesses for them to thrive. So broadly, those are some of the proposals we're making. Unmute. You're muted. You are muted to me.
Thank you, Olwethu. There I was thinking, asking Khensane to unmute herself as well. Thank you for highlighting that. Khensane, welcome to the conversation. Please unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Good afternoon to everyone. Am I clear? Am I audible?
Very.
Yep.
Oh, okay. So my name is Khensane Mokhari. I'm 22 years of age. Yeah, what's there to say? I live with a visual impairment. So, well, technically I'm identified as legally blind, whatever that means, but yeah, I'm blind, and yeah, that's about it.
Thank you so much, Khensane. We were actually earlier on talking about some of the challenges that people with disabilities face, and on the line, we've got Ntswaki, who was also sharing with us her experiences about how it's been like living with a disability, especially coming from a point of not being born disabled. And we would be interested in hearing your story about how has it been as a disabled person navigating your way into being an economic participant and doing business and moving around in South Africa.
So with that, personally, much like Ntswaki said, I also wasn't actually born blind. I lost my sight when I was 15 years of age, and I was in high school, and I was doing grade 10 at the time. So I think initially, I was confused, angry, yeah, just like out of touch with reality, honestly. But as time went by, I think when I was well equipped with what my condition was, what the issues were, and I was medically informed in terms of what was going on with me, I felt more empowered. In terms of navigating my way through society, I won't lie. The issue of safety is always like the black cloud hanging over my head. I always have to think twice if I have to go somewhere. I have to think twice when I have to go get like important stuff from like a mall, or I should ask somebody to accompany me, and people are not necessarily readily available, especially like in my family, because everyone is just busy with their own thing and they can't necessarily take me everywhere I need to go all the time. So the safety issue is quite a big thing, and yeah, it's been tough, but we survive.
Thank you so much. And one last question. What does Women's Month mean to you as a woman living with disabilities?
Funny enough, I was actually born on Women's Day. And at the time when I was doing grade 10 at the special school that I attended, that I matriculated in, one of the questions that one of the parents asked me was, don't you think you are kind of burdened with a huge burden? Born on Women's Day and you live with a disability. So what do you think is your purpose in life? And fast forward, I think 4 or 5 years later, I realized that my purpose might be to represent or to stand up for the rights of disabled women in society. So I'm part of a network that deals with gender-based violence, and in that network, I'm part of the committee that deals with social behavioral change as a representative of the youth and persons living with disabilities. So what it basically means is for us to kind of try to change society's behavior in terms of what they view women as, and to kind of switch up from past times and allow people to actually think in a different and a more modernized manner, because times have changed. Women are a bit more emancipated than back then. So for industries, for society itself to actually open their minds to a world where we all kind of live equally and no one is looked at because of their gender, but they're only looked at because of their competence and capabilities in society. Thank you.
I think you've hit on Olwethu's passionate points, talking about the need for universal approaches that are inclusive for every member of the society. Olwethu, any aspects that you'd like to share with Khensane before we wrap up?
Well, I'm happy that Khensane was able to really touch on the struggles faced particularly by women with sight impairments. Because I think that you see, there is no one size fits all to disability. If a person with a disability, or rather a visual impairment, and is completely blind, has not been taught how to feel money, and goes to a spaza shop to buy something, and would not know the difference between 100 rands and 10 rands, he gets robbed serially. And that's different to somebody who's just a wheelchair user but can see and stuff like that. So I'm happy that she was able to articulate the nuances within the space that she's in. And all I would really want to say to her is that it's important that she raises those important nuances so that in both policy and administrative processes of both government and the private sector, those nuances are appreciated, and that they too, within their sector, are given the full rights to enjoy as everybody else. And I want to say she must keep it up.
Thank you so much. Ntswaki, are you still on the line with us?
She's not here. She's got issues.
Yeah. No, she did have another commitment, so it's understandable. Khensane, as we wrap up, what are those support and interventions that you would like to see that would help you thrive in your areas of interest?
Oh, thank you so much for that. So, okay. Initially, when I completed my matric, I did go to varsity, but there were a lot of complexities in terms of, like I said, like I already mentioned, I wasn't born blind. So I actually had to come to terms with my new visual condition at varsity. And that was, yeah, a bit tricky, complicated, and for the lack of a better word, psychologically tormenting. But in terms of intervention levels, I wish in terms of like policy level for people to, for the government particularly, but also people to be more accepting, more understanding, and more receiving of persons living with disabilities. So like my good sir mentioned, there's no one size fits all for persons with disabilities. It's different cases, different strokes for different folks. So in terms of behavioral change, that is my biggest thing. I wish there could be some sort of implementation of a policy where people are able to then change their behavior and the way in which they view persons with disabilities. Yeah, that's about it.
Thank you so much. And what message would you give to women in South Africa living with disabilities as a parting shot?
So as my parting shot, what I would say is we are not pawns on a chessboard where we are controlled by government. And by being controlled, I mean, we don't entirely have to depend on social grants to now thrive in society. What we should do is come together. There's one point that you mentioned and I loved. We should stand united, because when we are divided, we are weaker. I, as Khensane, might have these great ideas, but alone, they won't come to fruition in any way. So we should stand together as women, particularly as women living with disabilities, hold each other's hands and share ideas, exchange ideas. What I've picked up is that we have these really amazing ideas, but in silos, they cannot be achieved. So we should learn to stand in unity and no, we can do this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Khensane. Olwethu, your parting shots. And I also agree, Khensane and Olwethu, my passion is also in economic development with a specific focus on finance, and women empowerment is the center of my passion as well. And I try and use the platforms that I have to be an advocate for others that are less fortunate than I am, and to lead with empathy. And through USAID's program, it also gives me an opportunity to have that connection between government, corporate being the private sector, and stakeholders that are for the benefit of the programs that we design. And from the conversation we've had today, this has been so insightful. This has influenced how we program and what priorities we put into advocating also on the policy space, so that we get to that equal state and we are inclusive in all approaches and interventions that we provide. Thank you so much. This has been super insightful. I thank you for your time, and I agree, and we will conquer, and the struggle continues.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.